All right, today we're jumping into a true classic of Islamic spirituality, Riyad Saliheen, which means the Gardens of the Righteous. Now, this isn't just some old book. It was put together way back in the 13th century as a practical handbook, a guide for a believer's entire journey through life, based on the wisdom of the Prophet Muhammad.
So let's kick things off with the huge question, one the book puts front and center. Think about it like this. Two people donate the exact same amount of money to charity. One does it so everyone will praise them. The other does it simply because they feel compassion. Are their actions really, truly equal? This question, well, it's the key that unlocks the entire way this book thinks about life.
And the text answers that question by starting right at the very core, with the one thing that it says changes everything else, the power of your inner intention. The whole idea is that before you even start worrying about what you're doing on the outside, you absolutely have to get your inner state sorted out first.
And that all comes down to this one crucial concept, ikhlas, or sincerity. The book basically calls it a non-negotiable for any action to count. It means that for any good deed to have any real weight, your only motivation, your sole motivation, has to be to please God. Not to get famous, not to build a reputation, not even for that warm, fuzzy feeling inside, just for that one higher purpose.
Now, the story behind this quote is just wild. The text talks about a prophecy of this huge army marching to attack the sacred Kaaba, and on their way, the ground is just going to open up and swallow every last one of them. But here's the twist. People asked, wait, why does everyone get the same punishment if they were there for different reasons? And the answer was that while their fate on earth is the same, in the hereafter, every single person will be judged on why they were there in the first place. Some were soldiers, sure, but others were just merchants tagging along, and some might have even been forced to go. Same action, same outcome, but completely different intentions.
Okay, so once you get that inner intention right, where do you go from there? Well, naturally, it starts to shape who you are on the outside, how you carry yourself. And that brings us to our second big theme, building a character of piety.
And this is all about the idea of taqwa. Now, you often hear it translated as just fear of God, but it's so much more than that. Think of it more like a constant awareness, a God consciousness, this feeling that you're always being observed, which then inspires you to do the right thing and stay away from the wrong thing. It's what sincere intention looks like when you actually live it out day to day. And if you want to see what that looks like at its absolute peak, listen to this. The book tells a story about a prophet whose own people were beating him so badly that he was covered in blood. And as he's wiping the blood from his own face, what does he do? He doesn't curse them. He doesn't ask for revenge. He actually prays for them, saying they just don't get what they're doing. That's taqwa in its purest form, showing compassion even when you're being attacked. So, you might be wondering how all these pieces fit together. Well, there's this incredible story in the text where the angel Gabriel shows up, disguised as a man, just to teach the basics. He lays it all out in 3 levels. First, there's Islam. These are the outward actions, right? The 5 pillars. Then you go deeper to Iman. This is the inner belief, the articles of faith. But the highest level, the goal, is Ihsan, or excellence. And that's when you bring the inside and the outside together. You worship God as if you can actually see Him, because even though you can't, you know He sees you. That's the ultimate expression of taqwa. So from this deep internal state of excellence, the book then zooms out. How does a person with a sincere heart and a pious character actually deal with the world and the people in it? This brings us to theme number 3, how to act in a community. And this quote right here is basically the golden rule for all your social interactions. The whole vibe isn't about making religion hard or scaring people away with rules. It's the total opposite. It's about being easygoing, being encouraging, and building a community that feels positive and welcoming.
And you see this principle applied in some really practical ways. For example, when people asked about just hanging out on the public roads, they were given this checklist, the rights of the road. This had nothing to do with traffic. It was a code of conduct for public space. Basically, a 13th century guide on how to be a good citizen, to make sure you're a force for good, not just another annoyance.
And the text is just packed with these small but really powerful rules for getting along. It gets into everything, from being merciful when you're doing business to something as tiny as letting your neighbor hammer a peg into a wall you share. It's all about choosing generosity over being petty. But honestly, that last rule might be the most powerful one of all. Speak good or just stay silent. Imagine if we all followed that one. So this whole framework, your intention, your character, how you treat others, it's all building towards something. And that brings us to our 4th theme,
The idea that at the end of it all, there's a final accounting for the life you were given.
The text says that on the day of resurrection, you literally cannot move a single step until you've answered 4 key questions. And look what they cover: your time, your knowledge, your money, and your physical body. The message is crystal clear. Everything you have is a gift, a trust, and one day you'll have to explain what you did with it. It's a pretty powerful reminder to be mindful about, well, everything.
But here's where it gets really interesting. This final accounting isn't just a private meeting between you and God. The book describes a scene where 2 funerals pass by. The people of the community say wonderful things about the first person, and they speak badly of the second. And in both cases, the prophet confirms their fate, explaining that the testimony of good people actually carries weight. In other words, your character is your legacy, and the people around you are the witnesses.
To really drive this point home, the text presents a scenario that is just chilling. It says the very first people to face judgment won't be the tyrants or the really bad guys. Nope. It will be 3 people who, on the surface, look like heroes: a martyr who died in battle, a scholar who dedicated his life to knowledge, and an incredibly generous philanthropist. Just keep these 3 guys in mind, because we are definitely coming back to them.
So where does this all lead? You've got your intentions, your character, your actions, and the final accounting. All of these threads come together in our last theme, the ultimate destination, the final consequences of the life you lived.
I mean, what a powerful image, right? This quote makes it so clear. Paradise, or Jannah, and the hellfire aren't some far-off places in another galaxy. They are incredibly close as your own shoelace, and they become more or less accessible with every single choice you make. A small act of kindness can pull you closer to one, and a moment of pride can push you toward the other. The stakes are right here, right now.
And the potential for reward for those good choices, it's described as just immense. Take this number on the screen, 70,000. According to the text, that is the number of angels who will pray for your forgiveness if you do something as simple as visiting a sick person in the morning. It's a way of showing how a simple act of compassion can ripple out and have this massive cosmic significance.
And really, the whole book is a study in these contrasts, these 2 paths. On one side, you have the things that lead to reward, like a creditor forgiving a debt and being forgiven by God in return. And on the other, you have things that lead to punishment. And notice the nuance here. It's not just the act itself, but the context that matters. A lie is bad, but it's so much worse coming from a king who has no reason to be afraid. Pride is bad, but it's especially ugly in a poor person who has nothing to be arrogant about.
Which brings us all the way back to our 3 guys, the martyr, the scholar, and the philanthropist. On paper, they are the A-team. They should be walking right into paradise, no questions asked. So what happened? Why were they judged first? And what was their actual fate?
Intention. The book reveals that all 3 of them were destined for the fire. Why? Because the martyr only fought to be called brave. The scholar only studied to be called learned, and the generous man only gave his wealth away to be called charitable. They did all the right things, but for all the wrong reasons, and in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. Their entire journey, this whole explainer, comes full circle, right back to that first question: why did they do it? And that's the question the book leaves us with. What's the sincerity behind your actions?